Imagine this. You walk out of the room. You didn't try to impress. You didn't perform. You didn't give him all your stories or laugh louder than you felt. And yet, hours later, days even, he's still thinking about you. Not because of what you wore, not because you flirted the best, but because your energy didn't leave when you did. It stayed. It haunted the air. You became a quiet thought that wouldn't go away. That's the art of lingering. And most women never get taught how to do it. See, what makes a man obsess isn't the obvious. It's not your beauty, your availability, or your effort. It's the experience of you, the emotional fingerprint you leave behind. The moment he realizes that your presence made him feel something deeper than he's used to. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's not about pretending to be cold, distant, or detached. It's about understanding how attraction works on a neurological, emotional, and energetic level. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to create the kind of connection that doesn't fade after a date, or a text, or a weekend away. The kind that lingers. We'll break down the psychology of anticipation, we'll dive into emotional depth, sensory presence, and the quiet power of feminine confidence. And by the end of this, you'll understand how to become the woman he remembers, long after you're gone. Let's begin. Let's begin with a truth that most people overlook. Desire doesn't thrive in closeness. It thrives in the space between. What makes a man crave a woman isn't how often she's around. It's how she makes him feel when she's not. That ache, that echo, that wondering. That's what builds obsession. And that feeling isn't born out of constant communication or 24/7 access. It's born out of emotional rhythm, the push and pull, the closeness and distance, the presence followed by space. Think of it like music. The power of a great song isn't just in the notes, it's in the pauses between them. The silence that builds tension before the chorus drops. That moment where your breath catches, where your heart waits. That's anticipation. And anticipation is emotional currency. But most women, especially when they like someone, panic at the thought of space. They rush to fill it. Text back immediately. Say yes to every plan. Offer reassurance, validation, effort, hoping to hold his attention. And unintentionally, they kill the craving. Because when something is always available, the brain stops assigning it value. It's not your fault. You were likely taught that love equals proximity, that attention equals connection, that if you don't remind him you care, he'll forget. But here's what's real. Craving is not built in the presence. It's built in the pause. Imagine watching a suspense movie and they reveal the twist in the first 10 minutes. You'd be bored. You'd check your phone. Why? Because you didn't get to want something before receiving it. It's the same in romance. When a man doesn't know what comes next, he leans forward. When there's a pause in conversation, he replays what you said. When he texts and you don't reply right away, not because you're playing games, but because you're living, his mind starts to move toward you. He starts creating stories in the space. What's she doing? Why hasn't she replied? Is she thinking about me too? And that's where obsession begins, in the unanswered moment. Because your absence gives him room to feel. Here's the psychology behind it. The brain is wired to pursue closure. It's called the Zeigarnik effect. We remember unfinished interactions more vividly than completed ones. Meaning, when he feels something with you and doesn't immediately get the resolution, his mind fixates. He keeps spinning the wheel, keeps going back to the emotional energy you created. But here's the trick. The space only works if what you gave him before you stepped back was real. This isn't about ghosting or withholding. It's about pacing. Think of it like a slow-burning fire. You don't throw all the wood in at once. You feed it, then you wait. Let it heat. Let it pull oxygen. When you offer him presence, real, open, playful, or intense, and then you leave a little pause, you give his nervous system time to process, to feel, to miss. That's how anticipation is built. That's how dopamine is triggered. That's how you stop being a moment and start becoming a pull. So if you want to become unforgettable, don't always be reachable. Don't always be instant. Be a woman who understands that less access equals more attention. Be a woman who doesn't chase connection, but lets it breathe. When you do, you'll feel something shift. Not because he's impressed, but because deep in his mind, something rare is starting to echo. And that echo? That's the sound of him realizing he wants more. Let's talk about what really makes a woman unforgettable to a man, not just in his body, but in his mind. Because the truth is, men can be surrounded by beautiful women. They can scroll past hundreds of polished faces every day. But what makes him stop, what makes him stay, what makes him obsess, is the woman who touches something deeper. Men become addicted to the woman who makes them feel emotionally and intellectually alive. Let's break that down. A man may be drawn in by beauty, but he stays because of resonance. And resonance happens when you don't just speak to who he is in public, but who he is in private. The part of him that's tired of pretending. The part that's hungry to be seen without needing to perform. Imagine this. You're on a date, he's telling a story, something simple. Most people would laugh, nod, move on. But you catch something in his tone. You ask the deeper question, not intrusive, but curious. You see him, not just what he's saying, but what he means. And for a moment he pauses, he leans in. He's not just interested, he's opened. That's the moment, that's the imprint. Because men don't just want admiration, they want emotional reflection. They want to feel like someone gets them without them having to break themselves open to explain it. When a woman brings that level of presence, not pressure, it hits him differently. But here's the magic. You don't need to overgive emotionally. You don't need to be a therapist, a fixer, or his personal healer. You simply need to bring your truth, your insight, your mind to the table. A woman who can challenge a man, gently, with grace, is unforgettable. Not because she argues, but because she makes him think. She says something that makes him sit back and reconsider. She has opinions, curiosity, passion. She listens, not just to reply, but to understand. And when she speaks, her words carry substance. That's what creates emotional contrast. Because most interactions in dating are surface level, predictable, flirty, safe, small talk. But when a man meets a woman who breaks the pattern, who can laugh and then drop a line that stirs something in his chest, that contrast burns into his memory. Like this. You know, you say that like it doesn't matter, but I think it does. What would it look like if it did matter to you? Boom. Pause. He's never been asked that. And now, he's engaged. Not just attracted, hooked. Because here's the truth. Intellectual stimulation triggers emotional depth, and emotional depth is where obsession begins. A man becomes mentally addicted not to what he sees, but to what he feels around you. If he feels sharper, funnier, more himself in your presence, that creates an imprint, a spike in dopamine, and the human brain will always return to what makes it feel alive. So don't hold back your mind. Don't shrink your thoughts to make space for his. Let your ideas stretch. Let your curiosity wander, not to impress, but to connect. Because the woman who lingers in his mind isn't just physically magnetic. She's intellectually engaging, emotionally steady, and she makes him feel more human, not just more wanted. That's the imprint that stays. That's the reason he keeps replaying your words in the shower. That's why he wonders what you're doing at 2 a.m. Because you didn't just entertain him, you moved him. And once a man feels that kind of impact, he doesn't forget. Let's drop into something primal now. Because even though emotional depth is what keeps a man bonded, what pulls him back in the middle of the night often starts with something even more subtle. More sensory. Men don't just remember what you said, they remember how they felt in your presence. That's where sensory seduction comes in. And no, I'm not talking about overt sexuality or performance. I'm talking about the art of impact without effort. The ability to ignite his nervous system through silence, stillness, a glance, a scent, a tone of voice, without ever needing to do too much. Let's start with the voice. A woman who knows how to use her voice, not to control but to caress the air between her and him, is unforgettable. Slow down. Let your voice drop slightly when you say something sincere. Let your words carry rhythm instead of rushing to fill the silence. When you do, you create a texture in the moment. You become listenable, not just heard, but felt. Your voice becomes a song in his memory. Now, scent. Scent is deeply tied to emotional memory. It's one of the most powerful subconscious anchors a person can experience. Think about how a certain smell can drop you into a memory so fast you almost forget what year you're in. When you choose a signature scent, soft, inviting, just enough to linger on his hoodie after a hug, you create an association. He smells it again, anywhere, and his body remembers you. You're not just a person, you've become an imprint. Touch? Let's go even deeper. The most magnetic touch is the kind that almost doesn't happen. A brush of your fingers as you hand him something, a light touch on his shoulder as you laugh, a brief palm resting on his chest during a goodbye. Not needy, not frequent, just enough to awaken something under his skin. Men crave the anticipation of touch. They notice when it's rare, when it feels natural, not calculated. That absence of overtouching, that's what makes them start imagining what more would feel like. Let's talk eye contact, the forgotten superpower. Not the kind that demands or dominates, but the kind that invites. Hold his gaze just a little longer than expected. Let a small, knowing smile rise before you look away. That moment, that subtle drop of feminine confidence, that's what burns into his memory. It's the look he replays when he's laying in bed, wondering if you meant something more. And finally, the underrated queen of them all, contrast. Men don't become obsessed with one-note energy. They crave complexity, contrast, layering. The woman who can be playful and sharp, soft one moment, unshakably grounded the next. The one who makes him laugh and makes him think. He never quite knows which side of you he'll see next, and that keeps him curious. See, it's the unpredictability within authenticity that creates addiction. You're not changing who you are, you're showing up in full range. Think about the most unforgettable movie you've ever watched. It wasn't predictable. It kept you on edge. It made you feel something new every few minutes. You are the same. When you combine sensory presence, your voice, your eyes, your scent, your restraint, with the emotional and intellectual depth we've already covered, you become a full-body experience. Not just a woman he's attracted to, a woman he's conditioned to feel something around. And feelings are what get stored in memory. Not logic, not lists, not effort, but energy, sensation, emotion. So if you want to linger in his mind, don't ask, what should I do to make him like me? Ask instead, what experience do I leave behind? Because the women he forgets showed up physically. But the woman he obsesses over? She left a trail of energy his body can't stop remembering. Here's the final truth no one tells you. You don't become unforgettable by trying harder. You become unforgettable by coming home to yourself. Obsession isn't triggered by perfection. It's not about being the most beautiful, the most available, or the most entertaining. It's about energy. Your energy is the unsaid message that walks into the room before you do. It's how you carry yourself without trying to prove your worth. It's how you hold eye contact without flinching. How you pause instead of rushing. How you choose presence over performance. A confident woman doesn't need to chase connection, because she knows she is the connection. Her life is already full. Her world is already meaningful. And when she brings someone into it, it's not to complete her. It's to share the overflow. That kind of self-contained energy, that's what draws a man in. Not because you're trying to hook him, but because being around you feels like relief, like clarity, like mystery, like home. You don't have to beg to be chosen. You have to trust that your presence, your rhythm, your depth is already enough. The women who linger aren't louder, they're just more real. So stop chasing obsession. Start becoming the experience he can't stop reliving. You're not just someone he dates, you're the energy he remembers in quiet moments. You're the woman who walked away and never fully left. That's the art of lingering.